Do you have a coworker who makes you want to rip your hair out? In this video, we're going to talk about how to deal with an undermining and passive-aggressive coworker. Stay tuned. We've all been in a situation where you're working with a coworker or a team member who's a little passive-aggressive, and most of the time, it doesn't really turn into a real problem. But in the event that you are dealing with a passive-aggressive coworker and it's gotten to the point where you need to take action, that's what we're going to talk about in this video. I have 4 different things that you're able to do to help deal with a passive-aggressive coworker. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Okay, the first thing that you're going to want to do if you are dealing with a passive-aggressive coworker is identify what the behaviors are. Oftentimes, passive-aggressive behavior can be identified by subtle or nuanced kind of jabs or comments about you, your workflow, your background, anything like that. And they are almost always intended to hurt or belittle you as an employee, as a professional, or as a person. Passive-aggressive behavior can look like sarcasm, innuendos, withholding information, procrastinating intentionally, things like that. If you start to see that a coworker is acting passive-aggressive, run this test by them and see if they're acting sarcastic, if they're doing implications about your professionalism. Is the behavior actually passive-aggressive, or are they just kind of a jerk? If they're acting passive-aggressive, oftentimes they won't confront problems directly. They'll make it more of a nuanced approach to kind of undermine you or belittle you in a very intentional way. The second thing that you can do is set boundaries and communicate clearly. Now, depending on your relationship with this individual, you might be somebody, you might have to work with them every single day, or you might not have to work with them at all. But one of the most important things that you can do with a passive-aggressive coworker is set boundaries, what is acceptable and what's not acceptable. If you're able to figure out when they cross the line and talk to them about it, or communicate clearly that they've crossed a boundary, you're gonna be really, really well off. Not every single thing that a passive-aggressive coworker says is appropriate, but it also doesn't mean that they've crossed a boundary. If it's something where they are actively undermining, critiquing, or trying to figure out a way to procrastinate your projects, you need to figure out what is that line, and you need to figure out what does it look like when they cross that line, and can you enforce it? So by figuring out what your boundaries are and being able to clearly communicate that when those boundaries have been crossed, you're going to start to minimize a lot of the passive-aggressive behavior. And if it becomes a really, really big issue, you need to get support from your executive team and or your manager. The third thing that you can do if you're working with a passive-aggressive coworker is look for other solutions for the problems that you have. Sometimes you can think of passive-aggressive coworkers like flies. If they're just a nuisance and not actually impactful on your workflow, you can actually figure out how to go around them or look for other solutions that don't involve them at all. And a lot of times this is very easy if they aren't part of your team, if they're not an active member of your team. If they're an active member of your team, you might have to work with your supervisor to figure out what other workflows or what other projects that you can work on that don't involve them. And the fourth thing that you can do is seek support. If you have enough of a paper trail or enough of a record of this person actively sabotaging you, making you feel uncomfortable, belittling you, or just procrastinating projects to be passive-aggressive towards you, you can actually bring that up to your supervisor. You can bring that up to human resources if you need to, but you can really make sure that you have the support that you need to be able to move your job forward. Having an active paper trail of what this person's doing to you or not allowing you to move forward is going to be really critical if you're actually looking to leverage support from your organization or from your team leader. If you're dealing with a passive-aggressive coworker, what other suggestions do you have? Let me know in the comments below. And if this video was helpful, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. I'll see you on the next one.